So why don't we all start by introducing ourselves? My name is Jeff from the Deep in Japan podcast.
My name is Long from Bento Bureau podcast, and next to me is...
And I'm Buzz from Bento Bureau as well.
It's really great to meet you guys, or at least to talk to you anyway. Thanks for having me on.
Thank you.
Thank you for talking to us.
So let's get to chatting. You guys have been students in Japan for 2 years now, is that right?
Buzz is 4 years now.
I've actually been here for around 3.5 years so far, and my friend Long here has been for
I
about-
came to Japan 1 year after Buzz, so me is like 2 years, 2 years and a half.
Okay. And what are you guys studying? Or do you have you're working on towards a major, I presume?
So our university, it has an English program, and it's quite a relatively new program, and it only has 2 schools at the moment that they teach in English, and that's business and economics. The other one's international relations, and basically everyone in Bento Bureau is situated under the School of International Relations, me and Long.
Cool. So, Buzz, you're from Qatar, is that right?
Yeah, I lived in Qatar for quite a while, and most of the people who know me, I think I originate from Qatar, but I just lived there for a while. I'm actually ethnically Palestinian, so every time I introduce myself, it's a little bit of a complicated story, because my family fled from the Palestinian territories during the 70s, and they went and lived in the UK, so I'm actually British, technically, but I just feel like I'm sort of an alien, and I can't really relate myself to any specific location. I just feel like I'm pretty international, to be honest.
The first time I met him, I knew him as a Brit, so...
That's cool. And Long, you're from Vietnam, is that right?
Yes, I'm from Vietnam.
I feel really bad talking to you as an American because my country is so fucked up and has done so many horrible things over the last 50 years that like...
No, that's fine. I lived in America for 3 years before I came to Japan, so...
Wait, is this Long or Buzz?
That's Long, yes. I went to America in 2011, finished 2 years of high school.
So how did you like it? As someone from Vietnam, what did you think about the land of freedom? Was it all that it's cracked up to be?
I mean, when I came there, I was a high school kid, and as a high school kid, the moment you leave the family and be on your own, that's the best thing ever. Like, you can do whatever you want. So the first 2 years of high school was the best time of my life, as in being able to do whatever I want. I could stay up late, I could play a game, so that's freedom for you.
Were you there with your family or there as like an international exchange student or something?
I went first as an exchange student, but after that I just enrolled as a normal student, high school student, yes.
Nice.
International student.
Now, when you were there, you have great English now. Did you have those English skills or did you pick them up later?
I think my English got worse.
Your English got worse?
In the past 1-2 years, you can ask Buzz.
Wait, living in Japan, your English
Yes.
got worse?
Oh, yeah,
Yes.
yeah, definitely.
That's pretty funny because most of the time we are kind of subjected to the gaijin bubble in school because we're kind of separated from the rest of
That's what I was going to ask you about. So when you're in Japan, do you feel yourself bubbling with other international students? Or when you were in America as a high school student, did you see yourself bubbling with other Vietnamese exchange students? How did that, or were you able to integrate and hang out with all the fat, free people? How did that go? How did that go?
In America, it was definitely the Vietnamese bubble because I was a shy kid back then. Now I'm more with the foreigners like Buzz and other friends. In the past 5 years, I've been talking mainly in English.
So in Japan, do you find yourself speaking more English or more Japanese?
Oh, definitely more English. My Japanese skill is... Buzz can tell me more about that.
Yeah, I mean, thanks to the sort of gaijin bubble we're subjected to, like I said, most of our friend circle is comprised of foreigners, international students coming, and we all talk in English, we learn in English, so our primary medium is through English.
Sure,
and
that makes sense.
We rarely engage in Japanese, even though, the first year I came here, I was like super into Japanese. That was like the main reason why I came here, and I studied my ass off. But yeah, after a while, it's just, schoolwork piles up, and
Sure.
then you start to kind of go with the flow, and Japanese becomes less of a priority when you just feel comfortable, which is unfortunate. But yeah.
What about you, Jeff? When you first came to Japan?
Okay, when I got here, I was an international student like you guys in Tokyo. In the heart of Tokyo, though, I was studying at Waseda, and I didn't have any Japanese skills whatsoever. I mean, I came here with almost nothing, and so for sure, I was bubbling with the other exchange students. But one of the great things about the Kokusaibu, the international division of Waseda, is that you had all these gifted students, many of them with great Japanese skills, and a great program that would recommend that we join clubs like at the school. So I joined the Waseda International Club and the Rainbow Club, Niji no Kai. I made friends with Japanese people to the best of my ability, obviously, through those two clubs. So that was great.
When was that exactly? When did you enroll?
Oh, God. It would have been like 2000.
Oh, so that's 18 years ago now.
I heard that a lot of the international students in Waseda come from, the Asian Pacific region, like China. Is that true?
When I was there, we had so many diverse individuals. It's just my parents just visited me here in Japan, and they brought a bunch of stuff that I had left back in the States. And one of them was the pamphlet that they gave us when we were doing orientation. And I was just looking through it, getting nostalgic. But I believe there was something like people from 50 countries, if I'm not mistaken. And there was about 120 students. So it was this really diverse group. And there were, I don't know about what the majority was, but there were people from Asian countries. There was, I remember Koreans, Chinese, but there were a lot of Westerners as well, a lot of Brits. It was a pretty good mix of people from all over the world. There were some Africans, and so we'd have these classes on like international relations or international politics, and it was amazing because one person would speak. Somebody from Africa would stand up and would say, well, from the perspective of Africans, yada, yada, yada. And then another person would step up and say, well, from the perspective of Korea. And it was like the United Nations in the sense that you have people from all over the world communicating about issues. And it blew my mind.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, it was great. I mean, it was one thing to be thrown into a foreign culture, Japan, and try to... you got this sink or swim mentality. Like every time you go to order food or whatever, you're like, can I do this? Is this, when you go to the bank, there weren't so many ATMs with English back then. I remember the town that I live in now didn't have any when I came here in 2001. So every day was kind of like a challenge. But even more than sort of absorbing Japanese and absorbing Japanese culture, that year in Tokyo, I think it was the diverse array of international perspectives that really, for me anyway, was eye-opening.
That's really interesting that you say that, because a lot of people from an external impression would probably think that, you growing up in the States, they'd probably assume that you would have more of an international, diverse community over there rather than in Japan, of all places.
Well, America is diverse in terms of the phenotypes of people that are there, right? You have like ethnically Japanese, ethnically Chinese, Korean, whatever. You've got these people that mix into the population, and so they say that it's like the melting pot or whatever. But people inside of the United States get incredibly biased media, right? So that they're constantly. Some people even go as far as to call it propaganda, the kinds of things that you watch on TV, and so I feel like the average person's knowledge of the outside world in America is probably much, much less than any other country in the world. So isn't this a stereotype? Americans are ignorant of the outside world. I feel like it is. Even though we're mixed up and in a sense there's like people from all over the world, we're still incredibly ignorant about the outside world. At least that's how I feel anyway. I don't know. Trump being president of the United States.
So you mentioned how you joined the club in Waseda. So what was that like? Because we have a pretty interesting experience.
Club experience, yes.
In our own. Yeah.
Really? Well, I don't have any amazing stories to tell. A lot of it was just sitting down on campus, finding a place with big fluffy chairs, sitting down and talking. But I do recall that when a new recruit was initiated into the club, we would go out drinking a lot. Like people, they drank so much. It was insane. You'd see people go into the bathroom and you knew they were vomiting because they were like about to pass out at the table, right? And then they'd come back and be forced to drink more, and just, I mean, it was really weird. And then I recall we went outside and we went to a spot on campus that was kind of famous with a statue of the founder, and I believe his name was Okubo. Anyway, they pulled out one of these medium-sized bottles of sake and had the new recruit just basically strip naked and chug the bottle of sake. And I thought, my God, I wonder how many people die on campus every year being
God damn.
And over the years, I've noticed that, in the news, I have seen stories of kids on campus, university students, who died because of alcohol poisoning, and a sort of cracking down on that. Maybe more so a decade ago. I don't hear about it so much anymore, but it seems like it was a really big problem when I got here in 2000. But anyway, what's your story? What did you guys experience joining clubs?
We came into the club probably. I have maybe a slightly different reason than you, but we joined this music club in our university because I play guitar, Long plays bass.
Nice.
So it started with that, and I just thought it would be an interesting opportunity to like trying to break away from that gaijin bubble.
Sure.
And I really wanted to make Japanese friends. So I thought this was the perfect opportunity. So that's why I joined. And we went there, and similar to you, the drinking culture, nomikai, the drinking parties, is really huge.
Even now then.
So
Okay,
they go drinking they basically go drinking after like almost every session. And, I'm kind of more introverted, and I would say Long is kind of the same. And I guess that's how we were drawn to each other, or maybe it's just because we're the only two foreigners in the club. But it's just like
a little too much.
We weren't really compelled to go drinking with them every time.
Yeah.
So it just felt a little bit alienating after a while, because it just feels like they don't really approach you all that much if you don't join the nomikais all that often.
We came in with a very different expectations, you say. We went in with an idea that a club is a place where you hang out after school, maybe play some music and practice your skills. But the club culture in Japan is definitely different than what we imagined.
It's much more serious, and they're very goal determined.
Right, and of course, and drinking as well.
Yeah, I remember during orientation, we had a, high up in the administration came out and gave us this big long talk about like things to watch out for while you're here and things to do while you're here. And one of the things they said was that, Waseda has, I believe it was something like 5,000 clubs, which just is a ridiculous number of clubs. And
5,000?
If I remember correctly, it's been 20 years, almost 20 years, but I'm pretty sure it's up there. It's like this ridiculous number of clubs. And
are those all official clubs, or do they include circles as well, like the Sakuru?
That's a good question. But what she was warning against is that, like, although we have this many and they've got names like, tennis club or blah 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 tennis club, or Poco Poco, this like every club has its own name, and it sounds legit, like, oh, this is a music club, this is a rugby club or whatever. Keep in mind that 50% of them or more are mostly just drinking clubs. So watch out for that was the advice the administrator gave.
Some wise advice right there. So what about after school? I mean, what made you decide to stick around in Japan, and why are you here right now?
Yeah, so I was doing homestay, and like you did in America, I was doing homestay with an elderly Japanese family. I say elderly, but like early 60s. They had like 11 or so students prior to me, so they were like really experienced host parents, and I had a great time. I learned a lot from them, but I didn't feel like my Japanese, despite doing an intensive Japanese study program at Waseda, I didn't feel like it was there yet. And I had only taken 1 year of Japanese, and then I came to Japan, studied for a year, went back and took a test to kind of, I don't know, some local University of Oregon test from the Japanese department to kind of prove that, I had these skills or whatever, and passed, got my degree, and I just wanted to learn more. Mostly language-wise. I wanted to acquire more language skills. So halfway through my year in Japan as a student, I was able to secure a job in the countryside as a Sister City Friendship Ambassador, and took that job. And then as soon as I got my degree, I flew back about a month, I want to say it was like about a month after coming back to the States. I flew back to Japan and started working as an ALT in the countryside.
So how's your Japanese now?
For the first 10 years I was here, I tended to think that my Japanese was just utter shit. I never felt like I was making any progress. You can't really, it's like being a child that's growing. You know, people who see you once or twice a year can see your improvement from the outside. But you yourself, as the child that's growing, you can't really see yourself growing, you know, unless you're measuring yourself. And although there's tools to measure your Japanese improvement, I wasn't taking the test that often, the Nihongo Noryoku Shiken or anything like that. And I just didn't feel like I was improving at all. And I felt like I lacked confidence. I didn't feel like I could communicate very well. And I worked really hard at it too. Maybe not as hard as some of the most diligent out there, but I put a lot of effort into my Japanese. And then I got to a stage after about a decade here where younger guys seeing me communicate with Japanese were like, wow, your Japanese is amazing. And I just, the compliments started rolling in. I'd hear Japanese people complimenting me. Sometimes listening to my pronunciation recently, I've noticed that it's not as great as I thought it was, but like I've heard people tell me, wow, you sound like you're native sometimes. I've been able to convince people on the phone a couple times that I was native. And so then I felt like my esteem started to sort of build up. And I think I got a little bit cocky. I was thinking, wow, my Japanese is great. And then after doing this podcast for a while and meeting people who are really good at Japanese, like superstars, Japanese Nihongo superstars, I've been humbled, and I don't feel like my Japanese is so great anymore. So I would say I'm about a mediocre N2 is where I'm at right now.
I wouldn't say N2 is mediocre though.
Well, my N2 is probably mediocre.
The question is, do Japanese people tell you Nihongo ga jouzu desu ne or Nihongo ga pera pera desu ne?
I get it all, and I hate it because you know what I mean. It's like anytime you hear something over and over again, no matter what it is, no matter it gets annoying after a while. I often hear the Nihonjin yorimo jouzu da ne, or like, Nihonjin yorimo Nihongo ga totemo jouzu, or Nihonjin rashi, or this or that. And I don't know. I mean, I imagine that a lot of people get this compliment. It's just something to say to somebody who's got decent Japanese. It doesn't even have to be great. They'll dole out those compliments to anybody who can have a conversation, I think. So that's one reason why I don't put too much stock in those compliments. I think testing is a great way to go. Recently, Edo Inuyama on this show talked about getting Japanese lessons online and just telling the guy, his teacher, flat out, give me critical feedback. Don't let anything slide. Give it to me straight. And I tell this to my wife a lot too. I'm like, whenever I make a mistake, I want you to correct me. But I think people don't tend to do that unless they're me. A lot of times I'll correct my wife if she says something or types something in Messenger that's off. I'll be like, actually, this is the way to say it, because that's what I want people to do with me. I'm not trying to belittle people or make them feel bad. Like, I want people to be able to learn, and I want to be able to learn. And the only way that I can learn is if people correct me when I'm wrong. Because if you're making the same mistakes over and over again without realizing it, you're just spinning your wheels. So I have a pretty humble approach to the language now. And unfortunately, now that I'm working for an American company doing IT tech support type stuff and using English on a day-to-day basis, I haven't really studied that much recently. But I need to get back into it. Do you guys study? Or do you guys take like the tests, like the JLPT, or do you take any of the Kanji Kente tests or anything like that?
I have taken it a few times. I started with the N3 and I passed that, and then the N2. I've been meaning to take it, but I just haven't got around to it. I have printed a few past papers though, and I practice, and it seems like I'm getting there. But for a while now, it's dropped off my radar. Studying Japanese. In my first year, I used to just think about I used to study all day and try and immerse myself in everything Japanese, changing my phone to Japanese, watching Japanese movies, everything. And nice. I used to just think that those Nihongo superstars you're talking about, a lot of them are professors or people who have been living in Japan for decades, and I just think that I really admire them because I think of the way I learn Japanese, and a lot of it involves technology. You know, when I'm out in the
Yeah.
streets, I need to translate some kanji, I can use Google Translate, or I use a dictionary app just to quickly look something up. I just can't imagine what it would have been like, you know, back in the day when they didn't have as many tools at your disposal. It must have been really difficult, and I really admire that. You know, it's pretty amazing. But yeah, moving on. Let's talk about podcasting. Really,
Sure.
podcasting in Japan. I don't know, but I haven't really read much about the subject. So, deep in Japan. Tell us about that. I mean, how long's it been going? How's the experience?
Okay. Yeah. I think I've been off and on sort of publishing podcasts for nearly a couple years now, and I do it because I live out in the countryside, completely immersed in the Japanese countryside, surrounded by Japanese people. If I leave my house, I'm talking to people in Japanese. And we're talking about local type stuff, like when I meet up with people, we're talking about maybe local festivals or you name it, the price of lettuce, it could be, and one of the things about an American who grew up around the Portland area coming out here into the countryside and living in the countryside is that I miss speaking English with people. I miss the community. I miss the university life as well. I miss interacting with professors and things like that. And so this podcast has been a way for me to have long, intimate conversations with people that I'm geographically segregated from, essentially. So it's really nice for me. It's that's what I use the podcast for, is to have good conversations with people. But what about the Bento Bureau? You guys are clearly using as a sort of, it seems to me like, but a similar kind of thing. You want diverse perspectives on Japan. So you're interviewing a diverse group of people, and you've got a great website up and some good quality stuff coming out. I really like what you're doing. But what was the core concept, and what are you guys trying to achieve?
What you just said is exactly how we started. We wanted to have a group discussion where we can share our perspectives on Japan. But at that time, when we started, we had a group of five guys, and we didn't know how to create the podcast. So we thought that let's just start it and just talk to each other on different topics. Today episode this topic, next day that topic. Yeah, because we are a group of international students. We are Bastian, who was from Germany. We had Jess, he's from Guam, and then we also had Jawad, he's from India. So you see, we have a group of students all over the corner of the world. So we thought that perhaps our perspectives may be interesting for the audience. So that's how we started originally, like the first 5-6 episodes. Yes.
We sort of hit a roadblock pretty quick though, because we wanted to talk about, deeper subjects like, I don't know, the education system in Japan from an international perspective, or politics. And the problem with that is, you need someone who's well versed in the topic, not just a bunch of undergrad students. And we were quick to find out that, there were times where we would mistakenly give false information, and we soon decided that this is not gonna work out in the long run. No one's gonna bother listening to this. So we needed to get someone who actually knows what the hell they're talking about, essentially. And that's where it went from there. Around the 4th or 5th episode, we started trying to incorporate guests on the show so that we'll be able to get a proper account of the subject we're talking about. And that seems like a winning formula.
Yep.
So far, and we're trying to maintain it as much as possible. I mean, we can see that Deep in Japan also always has guests on the show because you try to talk to people, and that's working out for you. I mean, I admire your hosting skills. That's something I really need to get better at. It's been a working process. It's been trial and error. Sometimes it's bad, sometimes it's okay. I'm getting better, so to speak. But it's been an interesting experience. Yeah,
You guys have a great website, and you've had some great topics thus far, like the Barakumin issue, radicalism and counterculture. That episode was great. You had a podcast about Amnesty International. I like what you're doing. It's very professional. You make me feel lazy, to be honest. I need to work a little bit harder, clearly.
I think our advantage is that we are undergrad student, and a lot of the speakers that we have on our podcast were acquaintance with one of our professor who helped us a lot. So he would contact his friends, or for example, and ask them if they would like to be a guest speaker on our podcast.
Access is
But
key. Yeah,
a lot of speakers, we
key,
have to
yeah.
go outside and like PR and have to keep sending people email. I think every 10 emails we send, we got like 1-2 replies, and we can't even make sure that they will agree to be on podcast. So that's like
Yeah.
side hustling is the essential thing you have to do.
I've been lucky in that every time I ask somebody to come on the show, even if they're famous, they've said yes. I've never been turned down yet. Oh no, that's not true. Atsugiri Jason never replied to me. But yeah, I didn't even send him a direct email. I think you have to go through a promoter or something like that. So I'm sure he's got an agent who's just like, yes, no, yes, no. But mostly I've been lucky in the sense that whoever I reach out to has been game. But you guys are also lucky. Not only do you have contacts and access through your university professors, but being near the heart of Tokyo, being out in Saitama and being able to get around and meet people, there's a huge number of people that you have geographic access to that I just don't. And when I interview somebody, 9 times out of 10, I have to send them a microphone in the mail, so it's tough.
Oh, have you done that actually?
Many times, actually.
That's pretty cool, actually. We were thinking about that, but we thought that would be a little too ridiculous to ask them for their address and if they'd feel comfortable with that or anything.
Yeah, that's one thing that I will do. I have listened to podcasts that are the host is recording directly, but then he records the guest through Skype, and I've done it, and you get used to it after a while, but I don't like that level, that poor level of quality. So I'm hoping to get somebody. I'm hoping that the guests will record for me so that there's dual recording and that we can patch those together later in post-production. So yeah, I have a Zoom mic, and I've been mailing people the Zoom. I've done that at least 3 times where I've mailed somebody a Zoom mic and had them record using that. And I was going to invest in a lavalier mic, but I had some issues with the one I recently purchased. But I think I might hit up a different brand and do that as well, because even if you just mail somebody, in a little envelope, mail them a lavalier mic and have them record into their iPhone, it's such better quality than it would be recording via Skype. So
I agree, yeah. I mean, you'd be surprised. Funny that you mentioned the thing about geographical access. Actually, our podcast, every single interview that's been conducted so far is through Skype, is through the internet. We haven't really ever sat down with any guests, only about 2 or 3 instances.
The last one was Cordell. The episode we talked to the 2 military
We had
men.
an episode talking to 2 military...
ex-military men.
yeah, that sounded live when I listened to it. I wasn't sure, but it seemed like you were all sitting down in the room together. Did you ever worry about being in the same room and having multiple mics and having sort of a reverb effect or any
Of
kind
course,
of leakage?
all the time.
How does that? How did you navigate that? What did you guys do?
Yeah, as the person who really, I have a background in audio editing because, I made music back in my teenage years. So I was sort of the one who started, the whole technical thing, and then Long started getting more into it, and now we're sort of a 2-man show. But back in the early episodes, there was always a concern with the microphones. We tried to position them in ways where they won't be, overlapping,
Sure.
or no sound leaks into the other. And also, we had a lack of mics back in the day. Sometimes we would have, we wouldn't be able to have any other choice except using a condenser mic for a person. And for those who don't know,
Yeah.
a condenser mic is like. If I'm rubbing my lap from the corner of the room in a hall, and the condenser is on the other side of the hall, like it will pick up the sound, and that was pretty dreadful.
Without a doubt.
Actually, I think the episode's out, and I'm really embarrassed in terms of the sound quality in that episode. We're thinking of going back and tweaking the audio a little bit so they can sound a bit better. But yeah, it's the process kind of varies every time. We try to but with every episode we learn something new, a new technique, and we try to incorporate that in the next episode. So it's just a learning process. What about you?
Yeah, my biggest thing has been sort of pain point for me has been when either I or a guest failed to record properly. Like I recently recorded a podcast with Amy Chavez, a very famous journalist here in Japan. And I mailed her the Zoom. So it's my machine. She's not familiar with it, right? And it has a sort of standby mode where you push the button once and it looks like it's recording because there's bars and everything. But it's not. You have to push the button again. And we recorded a whole podcast when she was in standby mode. And it was great. It was such good material. And I'm like, yes, this is going to be awesome. And then she's like, yeah. And then we finished. And she's like, oh, no, I think I
That's
didn't record it."
unfortunate.
Like,
That's
"Oh."
so unfortunate. Did you end up re-recording the episode?
We did, and the re-recording was great because she's so good at what she does. The re-recording was also great. But what I found is that whenever, and I've done this with friends as well, who we recorded and it didn't work out, and then we wanted to go back and re-record, the magic is never quite the same. You don't want to talk about the same things again because you've already gotten the reaction from the person you're speaking with, so you'll tend to skirt it or hit it from another angle or just not talk about it again. So with Amy, she just talked about different things for the most part, which was fine. She's got a lot to talk about. But actually the same thing with Ado. We had a sound leakage issue. And so our first 2 hours, he gave me like highlight clips from his website about people who had naturalized and become Japanese citizens, looking at the history of these people. And that's what his site does, by the way. And he was talking about them, summarizing their life stories, and I was like, wow, this is absolutely fascinating. And then the audio was unusable. Those have been my major challenges. But I suppose if I wanted to get better, I should probably put up a really glossy website like you guys have. Your website is great. Who did this for you?
Oh, that costs a lot of money.
It does.
Okay,
yeah.
that's what it is. Money.
Actually, we all pitch in.
Yeah, the only way we can be able to sustain the website is that we all pitch in. We have 5-6 people pitch in together for
Who
the
are
website.
you? So you hired a dev, or did you? Who did this for you?
Oh, that's Squarespace, and on
Okay.
Squarespace it has templates, and you can just click, drag, and drop. It's pretty easy.
We got a student discount actually, so that's how we were able to sustain it. And actually, the problem is that the student discount is only for the first year. So after this year, we're trying to figure out some, relocating to a different website or hiring someone to make the website, because Squarespace is just too expensive for us to maintain past the student discount. So.
I was looking at it and I was wondering, is this a Squarespace website? You can't tell because there's no ad to Squarespace. It's not in, I mean, obviously it's bentobureau.com. So did you pay for a custom domain?
Well,
How does
when
that
you
work?
pay for Squarespace, you get access to their premium themes that you can just choose whatever you like, and there's a lot of customization involved. Actually, if you scroll down to the bottom of the website, if I'm not mistaken, it would say powered by Squarespace.
Oh, I turned that off though.
Oh, he turned that off.
Squarespace, nice that they allows you to turn that off.
Yeah, I didn't notice that at all. Okay. So that's why it looks like it's not a Squarespace site. It looks really good. You guys did a great job. And but what does that cost about a year? What are you putting into that per year?
Maybe it's 200 something.
yeah,
I don't
about-
remember.
Almost $200 per year.
Extra 15 for the domain.
Yeah.
I host on SoundCloud now, and it cost me about $100 a year to throw them up on SoundCloud. But I heard that SoundCloud is in financial trouble and that they might not be around forever, so I'm a little bit worried about that as well.
I didn't hear about that actually. Funny you mentioned that because we just made the transition to SoundCloud as our main platform actually. So
2 months ago we migrated to SoundCloud. So
Well,
oops.
Just check it out. It might just be a rumor. I haven't actually confirmed it, so I'm not sure.
You were talking about recording failures. Funny you mentioned that because you had an episode with Baye McNeil, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Right. Yeah.
We actually sat down with Baye McNeil a few months ago, and we just had the best conversation, probably the greatest.
He's so awesome. That guy he can talk about anything.
It's so easy to talk to him. It was just so fun, and I was just, I came out of that episode just being that recording just being so happy and ecstatic that it just went so well. The conversations, the flow was just so great, and the content, in my opinion, was the best. But unfortunately,
it didn't work out for you.
It turned out that we were using this shady Skype recorder application back then, just testing it out, and that's how we were recording his voice. And unfortunately, it ended up having a technical error where it didn't record the sound file.
Oh man!
And we just had a mental breakdown over here.
Oh, you should have seen Buzz after the podcast. He looked like he's gonna kill himself or something.
I had PTSD for the rest of the day.
He's great, and he's I don't know if you have him added on Facebook, but he's been on TV a lot recently talking about
he has, I noticed
blackface in
that.
Japan, and he's things are pretty wild right now. This would be a good time to have him back on your show if you can, because I'm sure he's got a lot to say.
After that failure, we emailed him and we apologized sincerely about that, and we asked if we could record it again, and he was just like, "Sorry guys, I guess it wasn't meant to be." So we just had to move on from that. But
he's a busy guy, so you can't really. Yeah, I mean, what are you gonna do? But it's sad when something like that happens. You feel like you feel like you were in the mine with a pick, and you were digging around, and you found a piece of gold, and then you just happened to like drop it, and now you can't find it again. It's like the worst. It's the worst feeling, It's a horrible feeling. So I understand that, and I'm sorry you had to go through that. But I would hit him up again and say, I've seen what you've been doing with in the media with blackface, and we messed up in the past, but our shit is nailed down now. It's airtight, and we'd like to interview you again about all this blackface stuff. And he may do that, actually. So sometimes it just takes asking twice to get things going again. But that's too bad.
Maybe we can hit him up, see what he thinks about it.
Yeah. So I wanted to ask you guys, what are your long-term plans? Do you see yourself in Japan in the future? Or if not, where are you going to go and what are you going to do?
The plan for me personally is not exactly clear right now. I mean, I have one more semester left before graduating, and the plan right now, I want to pursue a career in the field of journalism. That's my ultimate goal. And whether it's in Japan or not, I haven't answered that question to myself yet, but I've been thinking starting next semester, I want to start working with a local news agency, local English news agency somewhere in Tokyo. So I've been doing some research, talking to some people, and hopefully going to start pursuing that next semester. And then I'll see how that goes before making any concrete decision on whether I'll stay here. Because, the last thing I want to do is work for one of the big firms in Japan, the work culture. I don't want to die, personally. Right. So just working for a smaller or medium-sized company is a much more attractive option for me personally. What about you, Long?
I'm really into journalism like Buzz. Actually, we share a lot of interests. So right now my plan is I think I will start looking for maybe something like a local news agency just like Buzz. The other day I went and I bought a new camera, and the guy who was a journalist for a small new agency down in Tokyo, and he said, well, if you want to contribute, take pictures and contribute, just hit me up and we'll see what you can do. So that is one option that I have for now. I also think about going to grad school, but I haven't decided which field I would pursue. So that's like plan B or plan A+1, something like that I can do at the same time as working as a journalist or something.
Yeah.
Or I think that's like the two main plans I have right now.
Plan
Long,
2
you
+ 2
could
is 4.
probably reach out to newspapers or magazines in Vietnam and say, look, I'm in Japan, I'm on the ground, and you could maybe even start getting this going before you graduate. You could start seeing if you could be an attaché in Japan writing for newspapers or any kind of publication back in Vietnam, right?
That's one thing. I mean, I live in Vietnam, and Vietnam is not a country that has freedom of press. So.
Ouch.
Oops. But having said that, oh no. I just hope that the secret agent didn't listen to this episode.
I hear everything.
So
multiple algorithms tracking everything we've said. So yeah, you're in trouble. You better.
I'm going back to my country in a week. I don't want to get dragged into a room for tea.
Yeah.
But you'd be covering Japan, not Vietnam. So you'd just be working for a Vietnamese firm.
Then I would need good Japanese, and my Japanese is abysmal.
Time to start learning, boy.
I mean, maybe. Yeah. Maybe
Well,
you would.
I also plan to sustain the podcast.
There you go. Yeah.
Maybe stay in Japan and continue working on a podcast. It still depends on how successful we get next semester.
Nice.
I don't know. I mean, I think we start picking up the pace right now. We are releasing episodes more frequently.
Yeah,
Our standard has improved tremendously. So
yeah. In my opinion.
I say next 6 months would be like the deciding time
They
for
would,
us.
they would
If we
be the most decisive time frame.
if we're gonna move forward or we just gonna stay as we are right now.
Speaking of maintaining podcasts, how's that been for you? How has how has it been seeing Deep in Japan grow from something out of nothing into what it is today? I saw you get quite a lot of listens on SoundCloud by what I've seen, so that's quite an impressive feat. We're just starting to pick up. We're starting to take off for the first time in a year, and that's probably because we actually started putting some real effort into it nowadays. But
I'm about as minor as it gets. So I mean, you say I've got a lot of listens. I don't know. I mean, certain episodes will take off. Like the Bento episode on racism got picked up by some famous YouTuber in Poland, and boom, overnight 10,000 listens. But that was a singular tsunami that sort of washed out, and I would guess that my regular listening audience is somewhere between 500 to 700, to be honest with you. It's not great. I'm not putting up any great numbers, and I don't expect to. And even if I don't, I'm not going to stop doing it. The reason I do this podcast, as I mentioned before, is because I like talking to people, and it's for me, it's a hobby more than anything. And I don't know. I don't think I have the skills to make this famous or any larger than it already is, or the time even. I don't have the money, the time, or the skills. So I'm happy with what I'm doing now. I'm hoping that I can continue getting interesting people on the show to share with my listeners. But yeah, I don't know. I don't see this being a source of income or growing much larger than it is now. I don't envision that
Definitely.
anyway.
Have you managed to receive any source of revenue from the podcast, or has this been purely a passion project from the beginning?
It is a passion project, but I think I was getting $12 on Patreon.com a month at one point, which I took about almost a year off from publishing episodes, and then those subscriptions dwindled down to I think $4 a month. But I don't think I'm even breaking even, because when you look at the cost of microphones and like SoundCloud fees, and like let's say I decide to put up a website like you guys through Squarespace, things like that tend to take a toll. And over the last 2 years, I think I've made $200 on the podcast, which is not a lot of money. I mean, the microphone that I'm talking into right now costs more than I've made doing this podcast. But yeah, I'm not doing it to make money. It would be nice if I covered expenses. I think that'd make me feel pretty good. I'm a father with 3 kids that doesn't make a lot of money. I have friends that are very successful that make a lot of money, and I'm not one of those guys. I barely scrape by. So I do this for the love of it. But if I could cover costs, that would be great.
Yeah, that'd certainly be great. I think podcasts, when you begin, is always about producing something that you are really proud of, and something that when the audience listen to, they find some value from it. So
without a doubt,
from listening to your podcast, I listened to the episode recently about I forgot his name, but his story of getting food poisoning and then going to the hospital. That episode,
right?
That one was really interesting.
Yeah.
I spent the whole night listening to it. I didn't plan to listen to it at first, but the moment 5 minutes after listening to the episode, it's like, this is so amazing. I need to keep listening to it. I want to know more about his experiences is really
Same thing-
mind blowing.
yeah, same thing happened to me when I listened to the Debito Aruto episode. It was so long, so I didn't think I would listen to it all, but I ended up listening to it the whole day.
He's a fascinating character and a polarizing character. I think he's done a lot of great things for foreigners in Japan, but I think his aggressive style has done some negative things as well. I tend to take a sort of medium approach. I like him. I like who he is. I like what he's doing, but I'm also listening to the criticism of him as well. You know, like maybe legal action isn't always the right way to approach things. I don't know. I kind it's fascinating. It's absolutely fascinating to listen to him talk. But somebody like Edo Inoue, for example, I'm sure could give you a completely opposite perspective on everything that guy says. So there are camps inside of. I find this fascinating as well. Have you guys ever seen the Who Looks Down on Who in the Naijin community like infographic? Have you?
I've seen that, yeah.
I've
I've seen that too.
I've seen it on Reddit.
Like, it's hilarious. But one of the things that I think that says about foreigners in Japan more than anything is that we tend to be in these little identity clusters, and it's weird how everybody in Japan tends to sort of have their own little community and their own little way of looking at Japan. And I think there's a major division between foreigners in Japan who are of the Debito variety or those that are of the Edo variety. In other words, people who love Japan, love everything about it, everything's great, and mostly what's bad about Japan is foreigners coming in here spreading their foreignness, right? There's that camp. And then there's the Debito camp, which is like, Japan is a vat of acid that eats away at your bones the longer that you're here. There's no rights or protections for foreigners, and everything is so backward. And Japan really needs to get on board with like modernization and human rights and this and that. And they tend to just complain about things here in Japan for the most part. I don't want to get locked into one way of viewing Japan. I don't want to find myself in a camp where automatically I'm labeling everything that I see and, not learning anything new. So one of the things that I've tried to do while I'm here is understand these different perspectives and try to navigate them and understand if there's maybe something missing from this perspective, something that could add to that perspective or whatnot, and try and stay in between things, so to speak. I guess you could call me a fence walker, maybe. I'm not ready to settle down and say Japan is this or that yet. I like certain things about my life here, and I dislike certain things about my life here. But more importantly, what about you guys? You came from, Vietnam in the case of Long, and you're all over the place, Buzz. But like when you guys came here, you've been here a couple of years now, approaching 4 years for Buzz. But like, what was shocking to you? And do you feel the same way about Japan now that you did 2 years ago? Is it all great, or do you find certain things lacking? How do you guys see things here?
I have one thing that has not changed after living here for 2 or 3 years, is that the sense of community. Like you go to the corner of the street and you see that you would call it the local, they would organize festivals for the kid. They would organize events. I went to Yaoko and I saw people putting up stands at flea markets, and it's like feel like these people here are really tight. The community is really tight. Compare that
Is
to
it like that in Vietnam?
No. Compare that to my country. I grew up in like the early 2000s, and I was luckily enough to experience some of that elements back then. But now, if you go to my country, like in a city like my Ho Chi Minh City, where I'm living right now, we don't even know the name of our neighbor, like the one next door. So,
yeah,
like there's a sense that people are just out there for themselves, and
so you're a city boy.
so society
you
is
grew up in Ho Chi
falling
Minh City,
apart.
right?
When I came to Japan, I just feel like if there's a way. If only there's a way I can find something that I can do and bring back the community together, like heal the society or something like that. I have a really pessimistic view about the society of where I'm from.
Ho Chi Minh City. That's where you grew up?
Yes, not only the city, but like the whole country is. It's as if people are just individualistic. Like the communities, I cannot find it anymore.
So I was completely disenchanted with America when I came here in 2000. Like, I had been reading a lot of American history, particularly probably what many people would call biased American history. Howard Zinn, who wrote A People's History of the United States. I'm not sure if you're familiar with the book, but if you're ever interested in reading U.S. history, I would definitely read that book. He talks about all the shitty things America has done from its inception to basically the Clinton administration. He passed away a number of years ago, but it's such an eye-opening book, and I've always been rather critical of America, especially American foreign policy, but also, you name it, like how unequal things are. I mean, you said you went to a private school in the States. You could probably throw a rock from any school inside of the United States and hit another school that has, like, it's so poor it doesn't even have like textbooks and, like, you know, broken windows and shit like that. It's weird. Like, the inequalities that exist in America are ridiculous. The gap between the wealthy and people who don't have any money. I believe it's like 1 in 5 children in Japan, in America rather, don't have enough food to eat. They're not getting enough calories to, like, sustain themselves throughout the day, which is weird because America is one of the most obese countries in the world, right? But we also have impoverished, hungry people as well. Knowing a lot about that as a university student, studying poverty, inequality, homelessness, the foreign policy of the United States and the history of the United States, I really had some deep-seated disgust, I would say, with America when I came here. So I guess I'm kind of like you. I tend to think negatively about my society. And I loved a lot of things about Japan that I didn't see in my home country. The way so many people still grow vegetables in Japan. You know, to me, that's amazing. The way neighborhoods kind of interact with each other and are very close-knit, like you described. I thought this was great. And, yeah, I don't know. There's a lot more trust here and a lot less crime. So those things appealed to me.
Well, I think it's time to wrap up the episode because we will have to leave in like 10 minutes. So
yeah, okay. I got to get back to being a parent. So
your kids are adorable, by the way. I see the pictures you post all the time.
Oh, of my kids. Yeah, they're so nuts. Yeah, I love them to pieces. They're so great.
I see he's been playing Mario Odyssey lately, huh? It must be great.
My littlest, my son, he's 3 now, and I thought that might be too young to play video games, but like oftentimes he's bored here during the day when his elder sister goes to school, and you know, I don't know, we live out in farming country, so we let him play a little Mario, and god damn, he loves playing Mario. And he's good at it too. So I think I'm gonna take him to the park today, though. It's not all Mario. It's not
all Mario. Gotta go out, see the outdoors, see the beautiful nature of Japan.
Exactly. Well, guys, thank you very much for talking with me. I really appreciate it. And I love your podcast. So I wish the best for you. I hope that it does nothing but succeed from here on out. And I hope that you succeed in your own individual careers in journalism, whatever you decide to do. I'm sure you'll do great. Good luck.
Likewise to you. We really love what you've been doing. And please, you know, keep it coming, because I really enjoyed the episodes you've put out so far, the ones I've listened to. Just keep doing what you're doing. It's really great. Yeah.
And there's so much we can talk about, yes. And we hope that we will be able to talk to you again soon in the future. There's just so many things that we can talk about. And with that, we'll say goodbye.
All right. Thanks, man. Take care.
That's all for our co-episode of Bento Bureau plus Deep in Japan podcast. Thanks again for listening. We had a really great conversation talking to Jeff. You should really, really check out his podcast. We'll put a link in the description below, wherever you're listening to us, on SoundCloud, on YouTube, whatever. You'll find the link straight to his podcast. Please check out his content. He's got a lot of great work and arguably better hosting skills than me. But yeah, definitely check it out and subscribe to our podcast to keep listening to what we got to offer. We got a lot of stuff on the way too. Hopefully in the next few weeks. We just finished from our university semester, so we got a lot of time on our hands and a lot of work to do for the podcast. So here's to the future.